I have seen more Asian Americans being upset at the fact that Black Americans are threatening to boycott Asian businesses than I have seen Asian Americans speaking out against the murder of Cyrus Carmack Belton, a child who was murdered at the hands of an Asian man. And this has everything to do with race, especially when anti-Blackness is so deeply rooted in our community. I have said this a million times, and I'll say it as many times as I need to so you can get it through your thick skulls. The only reason why Asians exist in America in such a large population is because Black activists fought for our right to be here during the Civil Rights Movement. White people did not want us here. It's not enough for Asian people to just be not racist. You have to be anti-racist, and you have to be speaking out against these injustices, or else they'll continue to happen. We absolutely owe the Black community solidarity, and the sooner that we realize that we're not much different from each other is the sooner that real change starts to happen.
Asian guy, if you're so bold, if you don't need the black dollar, here's the thing. Do what the white people did back in history when they hated us so much that they didn't even want our money. So how about you go create those businesses in the white neighborhoods? I'll wait. Okay, you can't. Exactly. Because they won't allow you to go build those businesses in their neighborhoods and circulate your dollar there, right? You have to come to our neighborhoods so you can circulate your money in our neighborhoods.
Asians out there, here's a list of things the Black community has done for us. The Filipino and Black community share a similar history of dealing with racism, economic exploitation, and imperialism. During the Philippine-American War, Black leaders such as Ida B. Wells supported Philippine independence. Black soldiers who fought on the American side ended up leaving their military positions to join the Filipino freedom fighters. The Civil Rights Movement outlawed racial segregation, which directly protected Asian Americans as well. Frederick Douglass advocated against the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. This isn't taking away from the hard work our Asian leaders have done to fight for our equality, but it's important we acknowledge that a lot of the progress we made is because we got help from the Black community. So in a time where K-pop idols are wearing cornrows and Filipinos are grateful for American colonization, let's get educated, y'all. We're in this together.
Asian people should not feel offended when Black communities say that they are going to boycott Asian businesses and focus on Black-owned businesses. In response to Cyrus Carmack Belton's murder, there is literally nothing that I can really think of that can really mitigate that other than just depending on their own communities. If Asian communities cannot prove themselves to be safe spaces for Black communities, then of course they're going to go where their community is more likely going to be safer. I am not going to sit here and pretend that anti-Blackness does not run deep into Asian communities and that is not still very much apparent in today and the way that the conversation about Black people in in Asian communities exists. There is no way that we can just ignore it, which is why as an Asian person, you should not feel offended when Black people, Black communities are trying to find solutions for things that unfortunately Asian communities just fall flat on. They fall flat on their solidarity. We saw that with like our 2026 elections. We fall flat. We need to allow these communities to build their own because we have showed them time and time again that we cannot be dependent on for them. And that is why as an Asian person, I cannot feel offended for any reaction that came out of the not guilty verdict.
Boycott Asian businesses. Look, I know many people are angry. They think justice needs to be served. So they want to boycott Asian businesses. I know emotions are high, and if this is how you think there's going to be some justice, okay, I'm okay with it. But then when does it end? When is it, okay, we've boycotted Asian businesses enough, justice is served, now let's move on. I just personally don't think this is the solution. If anything, it produces more tension, creating some unnecessary race war. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Asian business owners that are like, what happened? Where's all my Black customers? They're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to make money.
When Trump was saying that, hey, we need to bring more manufacturing jobs back to America and depend less on China, where was the Asians at? It was crickets. Now all of a sudden he talking about, oh, it's going to be a race war. No, it's just going to be between you and you not making your bank payments on your loans. Because that's what Black Americans is talking about, pushing Asian businesses out of Black communities. You don't see any Black businesses in Asian communities. You don't see any white businesses in Asian communities. So where is this entitlement coming from? People, this is not China. This is not any Asian country. Nobody's forced to shop nowhere. People could shop and support who they want to support. But like I said before, this won't be no race war. This will be youth going out of business. That's it.
There are more Chinese restaurants in Black neighborhoods than almost anywhere else in America. So much so that Chinese food becomes an integral part of the Black experience growing up. In New York, the chicken wing and pork fried rice $5 plate was the after-school special. But I genuinely never stopped to ask why that is. I just thought Chinese people found the niche and exploited it, but there's a whole history here. At a high level, being Black and a millennial, I have some understanding of the issues and how the U.S. government pitted Asians against the Black community, but I'm still too young to understand the tension between Korean and Black neighborhoods during the LA riots. Why Chinese food, Korean beauty supply stores, and liquor stores are all pervasive and in every single Black neighborhood across America. But like with most things, it all comes down to anti-Blackness and the intentional oppression of Black Americans and using other marginalized groups to do so. America, right?
They just don't help the community, you know, and for us guys to eat their food, we should get some type of feedback, and we don't.
They don't help out and do anything. I mean, they can be right here for 25 years. You can tell them we having a fundraiser right here in front of the stores. Most people probably tell you, like, get from in front, get from in front. But you don't want nobody in front of your joint. You don't want to donate nothing, like, but you can't get them out of here. It seems like they popping up like motherfucking weed shops, liquor stores.
In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. Basically, a "you are not welcome here" signed into law. Nearly every Chinese immigrant was banned from entering the United States. The only exceptions were diplomats, students, and merchants. So Chinese immigrants got creative. If owning a business is the ticket in, then everybody's opening a business. And restaurants were low cost to start, no professional license that could be denied on racial ground, yet written into law, just food and hustle. They found a loophole which fueled survival inside a system designed to keep them out. Now, let's fast forward a few decades. Redlining is in full effect. The federal government is literally drawing maps of Black neighborhoods and making them too risky for investment. White businesses are leaving, banks aren't lending, and Chinese restaurant owners, who are also being locked out of white neighborhoods by housing discrimination, are moving into the same spaces Black families are being contained in. Two communities, both excluded by the same system, ending up in the same zip codes, but with vastly different realities and relationships with the country and the government. By 1966, the civil rights movement is at its peak. Black Americans are demanding systemic change, and suddenly magazines start publishing stories of how Asian Americans are thriving, hardworking, successful, ergo, the model minority. And the subtext was loud and clear. If they can do it, what's your excuse? They weaponized Asian success that was fueled by active oppression of Black people as a tool manufactured to reframe 400 years of deliberate economic exclusion as Black cultural failure. It also worked to pressure Asian Americans into distancing themselves from Black civil rights struggles to protect their own status. Divide and redirect. The thing about the model minority myth is it flattened the entire Asian American experience. It ignored poor Asian communities, refugee communities, undocumented workers. It picked the most palatable version of Asian success and used it as a kugel against Black people. Sounds familiar, right? While that narrative was being pushed, Korean-owned beauty supply stores and liquor stores were becoming fixtures in Black neighborhoods for the same structural reasons. Banks wouldn't lend to Black entrepreneurs in their own communities. Korean immigrants had access to community lending networks called KAI, so capital flowed one way while resentment built another. Black dollars leaving Black neighborhoods, frustration getting aimed sideways at other minorities instead of upward at the system that engineered all of it. And this was all by design. The Chinese Exclusion Act, redlining, the model minority myth, three separate tactics by the government with the same goal: keep Black wealth suppressed, use everyone else as an unwitting instrument to do it. We see the remnants of this today, where we have some Asians that are still buying into the model minority with, or buying into white proximity to whiteness. But at the end of the day, we're all a part of the same system being used to oppress each other, with black people always being on the bottom of the chopping block in America and for the American government. So the next time you're in a black neighborhood ordering a shrimp fried rice from that spot that's been there for 40 years, just know the menu has a whole history attached to it, and one that we all should know. Stay black, stay blessed.
Someone told me about this very disturbing TikTok trend in China. It feels painful to even describe it, but since I grew up there, I feel obligated to have a few words. So basically, a lot of people in China were filming themselves torturing these dolls that have dark skin. Not just any dolls, but specifically dolls with dark skin, which apparently sends a racist and sadistic message. It really pains me to talk about this. Maybe I could say something like not all Chinese, but it wouldn't mean much, because statistically, the Chinese population, including the immigrants outside China, are still, in general, pretty racist. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They just are. So I want to talk a little about why. Especially since most people in China never had a chance to see a black or brown person up close. Where does this behavior come from? First, I want to say, just as in any country, racism is always highly correlated with ignorance. You need to understand, contrary to what many people may have told you, most parts of China are still highly undereducated. Pile on me if you want, but it's true. I mean, their education is okay in terms of math and science, but when it comes to humanities and social sciences, it's like non-existent. Maybe some top universities have some decent programs, but high schools and local colleges are basically in the Stone Age. There's no empirical political science at all. No sociology, no human geography, maybe some geography, but not human geo. There's history, but the content is highly selective. Almost everything in the history textbooks has something to do with glorifying the Chinese Communist Party. Not much else. Literature, well, barely. The reading assignments in high schools are very boring, except maybe a few ancient pieces, and very few translated articles from other countries. So basically, students are not supposed to understand people and societies. They're trained about everything else, but not human beings. Because this way, the ruling party has an easier time telling them what to do. And that ignorance also infected the Chinese immigrants in other countries because they are mostly STEM majors. They not only don't know social sciences, they kind of look down on social sciences. Some of them think political science is pseudoscience because, the data are not as neat as in a chemistry experiment. Well, that'd be another topic. But basically, ignorance in how the human world works is always a big risk factor for racism. The second explanation, the cult of money in China affects the psychology toward race. I mean, of course, Americans love money too, but compared to how much Chinese love money, you guys are like amateurs. China literally has a god called Caishen, which means god of money. I don't know any such god in other cultures, but Caishen is a big deal in China. It's actually worshipped by Chinese of different beliefs, like Buddhists, Taoists, and some other local paganists, even atheists. They all sort of worship the god of money. This money cult was especially explosive in the last half century because China was in this transition from the Maoist version of hungry communism to a net-breaking extreme of capitalism. So 2 generations of Chinese were basically rediscovering economic competition, and they just went crazy. There's not a family or friend gathering in China where people don't talk about money. So of course, race is also incorporated into that monetary value system. White people have more money, so they must be a higher race. About 20 years ago, my wife was having a business lunch with some white guys in Shanghai. And guess what? the receptionist of the restaurant tried to stop her from entering. He just basically asserted himself between the white guys and my wife and blocked her. She had no idea what was going on. Maybe the guy thought she was pretending to be a part of the group, or maybe he thought she was trying to hit on one of the white guys. But either way, you are not their bodyguards. Why do you care? Before she could figure out what happened, one of the white guys turned back and shouted at the receptionist and made him back off. You know, like a tough colonizer in those movies. Pretty funny. And of course, that money-based racism affects Chinese people's attitude toward black people. They use race as a proxy to decide who can be a source of revenue. A lot of Chinese disrespect black people because they don't see a swell pocket. You can see this in the United States too, right? Even the most racist motherfuckers would pretend to be polite in front of rich black people, right? I bet you'll see a lot of crazy Chinese fans too if some NBA teams visit China. So part of racism is really just classism. Okay, my third point. Some of these racist video trends may have been the Chinese government's strategy. I don't have any evidence, but I know for sure that the CCP wants Chinese immigrants to be hated in America. Why? If they're hated, they'll feel more vulnerable and be more loyal to the motherland. They'll either go back or maybe help China achieve some policy goals in the US. So there's a very real possibility that the Chinese censors intentionally let those trends slip through their fingers to sow discord between Chinese immigrants and African Americans. You know, the censorship in China is highly effective. With both AI and a massive team of online police, I just can't imagine anything the government doesn't like can become a trend. So on one hand, it's a reflection of organic racism, but on the other hand, it could also be assisted by a centralized algorithm. And of course, making Chinese Americans and African Americans hostile to each other will also help Trump. And China definitely wants Trump in power because China's foreign trade literally exploded under Trump's trade policy, as America is dumping its traditional partners. So China probably wants Trump to declare martial law and rule forever, you know? So of course, one way to make it happen is to make Chinese immigrants unable to stay in the liberal tent. Again, I can't prove it, but it's very hard to find alternative explanations for the censorship malfunctioning in the Dao case. Okay, the last point. Contrary to what you may have seen on Xiaohongshu, the Chinese population is deeply, deeply unhappy. And unhappy people tend to be racist, as you can probably see in the MAGA crowd. Unhappy people are desperate to vent on someone. Chinese people can't vent on the government because they don't want to go to jail, and they can't vent on white people either because it may cause diplomatic incidents and their accounts may get banned. So what do? They look for a target that will not get them in trouble. You might ask, why are Chinese people unhappy with all this booming economy? Well, I talked about it many times before, so I just repeat it very briefly. So one thing is the fierce competition. Most Chinese high schools don't release the kids until 10 p.m. How can you develop a happy personality with an adolescence like that? And competitiveness is partly a result of inequality. The pay gap between good jobs and bad jobs is just too crazy. Why do you think food delivery is so cheap in China? They pay the delivery man like nothing. I saw an American TikToker saying that her delivery man started crying just because she accidentally reported a late meal. Life is fucking hard there, guys. I talk about the hukou system, Google it. How 50 million children have to live away from their parents due to the public school enrollment policy against migrant workers. Look it up. And of course, the censorship. The absolute scarcity of good movies and good pop music due to censorship. I know you guys probably have a lot of complaint about America's streaming services. I do too. But imagine if they remove all the shows and movies that reflects societal ills and government corruption, and then remove all the LGBT content, all the childhood rebellions, all the shows about protests, labor disputes, women's rights, just all gone. How would you feel? That's the state of entertainment the Chinese people are living in, regardless of the GDP growth. So there's a shortage of stimulations, and those psychopathic black doll torturing videos are part of their desperate attempt at finding stimulations, the only type of stimulations that are still allowed. It's not an excuse, of course, but it's a psychological reality in a suffocating environment, just like some Deep South American communities that are still dominated by religious doctrines. Of course, they're gonna have issues. It's not economic anxiety, it's just regular anxiety. Anyway, that was my 2 cents.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing great wherever you are watching us from. Have you ever noticed how people suddenly become very concerned about unity the moment a community decides to stop spending its money somewhere? A growing number of Black Americans are choosing to boycott certain businesses operating in their neighborhoods after a controversial verdict involving the killing of Black child. And instead of focusing on the loss of the young life, much of the conversation has shifted towards concern about profits, customer loyalty, and what boycotts might do to the local business. That reaction has raised an important question. Why is there more outrage about losing customer than there is about losing a child? For many people, this isn't just about one case. It's about decades of frustration that have been building beneath the surface. It's about communities feeling like their dollars are welcomed, but their concern, pain, and humanity are often ignored. Supporters of the boycott argue that customers have every right to decide where they spend their money. That's not it. That's not race war. That's how market economy works. Every day, people choose which businesses to support based on their value, experience, and interest. The debate also reopened discussion about the complicated history of Black and Asian communities in America. Many people don't realize that discriminatory policy affect both groups in different ways. Housing segregation, redlining, and exclusionary laws created conditions that push marginalized community into many of the same neighborhoods. Over time, immigrant-owned businesses often become feast in predominantly Black communities. But critics argue that while businesses benefit from Black customers, genuine investment in those neighborhoods did not always follow. They point to situations where profits left the community while local schools, infrastructure, youth programs, and small Black-owned businesses continue to struggle. Whether that criticism is fair, every case is open for debate. However, the perspective itself has become a major source of tension. Another issue being discussed is anti-Black racism that exists in many parts of the world, including within some immigrant communities. Some Asian Americans have openly acknowledged this problem, arguing that difficult conversations are necessary if genuine solidarity is ever going to exist. Many have also pointed out an often overlooked fact: the civil rights victories won by Black activists help expand opportunities for other minority groups in America. Because of that history, some believe there should be greater willingness to stand with Black communities when raising concern about injustice. At the same time, others warn against painting entire group with a broad brush. Millions of people are not responsible for the action of individuals. Communities are reserved, and there are many people speaking out against racism regardless of their background. That is why the real conversation isn't about division. It's about accountability. It's about whether economic relationships should be based solely on profit, or whether they should also include mutual respect. It's about whether communities that spend billions of dollars deserve more than just products and services. Do they also deserve solidarity when tragedy strikes? And perhaps most importantly, it's about recognizing the power of collective action. People vote in election, but they also vote with their wallets. Every dollar spent is a choice. Every purchase is a form of support, and every boycott is statement that says if our money matters, then our lives should matter too. The challenge moving forward is figuring out how communities can move beyond silence, resentment, and defensiveness towards something more meaningful. Honesty, dialogue, mutual respect, and accountability that goes both ways. Because real unity can be built on avoiding uncomfortable conversation. It can only be built on comforting them. Anyway guys, what do you think about this video? Drop your thoughts in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and share the video to help the channel out. See you in my next video. For now, peace.